Brendon O'Connor is an associate professor in American politics at the US Studies Centre at the University of Sydney, and he joins me now. Brendon O'Connor, do you think that the US should release a photo of the body of Osama bin Laden?
Well, this is quite an amazing story. Apparently there are 3 photos, one immediately after he was shot, which isn't very good, one when he was taken back to Afghanistan in a hangar, and a third one when he's released his body into the sea. The second one's apparently the best photo, but it's gruesome as they described it on the clip you had at the White House. So there's a huge demand for this. I read a very small story on this on CNN, and there was 125 pages of responses of conspiracies. So there'll be so much demand to release it for proof. A lot of people won't believe it without a photo. So I think in the end the pressure will be there to release some kind of photo.
And do you think the American media is actually going to show it?
Well, I think once they have the photo, they'll be very happy to show it. There are already claims that some people have a photo already. It's probably a Photoshop thing. There's already stories, conspiracies going around about leaked photos and the like. So I think the pressure will be enormous, a bit like the birth certificate. You know, there was this need to get these things out there, get the conspiratorial talk out of the way and deal with the real serious issues. And this probably will be an impediment that they'll just have to confront. Just like the details about how bin Laden was killed has now become quite a big story.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because the White House has been struggling to get its story straight about the moments leading up to the killing of Osama bin Laden, and now they're saying, look, he wasn't armed and he wasn't hiding behind a woman. She rushed at the Americans. Are you surprised at this mixed messaging? How damaging are these mixed messages coming out of the US?
Well, the want to get the story out was so huge. The anticipation that people believed something so big was going to be announced late on a Sunday night. So I think they were probably thinking more about the security of America, quite rightly, the relationship with Pakistan, quite rightly, and maybe the public relations of the finer detail could have been better done. But I wouldn't be too critical of them for that. I think there are bigger issues than the exact details. It's amazing how interested, all of us probably are in those details, but there are more important things, and I think a sense of perspective on this is pretty important.
The CIA Director Leon Panetta has made it clear that those Special Forces troops had orders to kill Osama bin Laden, that they were only going to capture him if he surrendered, but the specific order was to kill him. We shouldn't be surprised by that, should we? Because I know there are some human rights lawyers saying, look, the US should have captured him, put him on trial.
Yeah, I don't think it's surprising at all. They wouldn't have wanted that situation to martyr bin Laden, to make his trial a point of enormous security concern. Obama used that word, bringing him to justice, that we heard. Some, I think, are very uncomfortable with that, but I don't think it's at all surprising. And they wouldn't have wanted to botch this. If they'd botched it in the way that Jimmy Carter's administration was seen to botch the hostage-taking in 1979, it would have been seen as a terrible negative. It would have enormous backlash. So they wanted a dead body and a finished job. And I think the risks of it not working out must have been enormous for Obama, and that's an interesting backstory here.
The other thing that the CIA Director Leon Panetta has confirmed, it's not often that we hear so much from the CIA boss, is it? But he has confirmed that intelligence that helped to lead up to this moment had been obtained from some detainees who were subjected to the so-called harsh interrogation techniques, i.e. waterboarding. This is interesting, isn't it? Because this is a technique that President Obama banned, and yet he's borne the fruits of the success of that technique.
I think I want to hear more of that story. I mean, I think there were 2 people that were waterboarded, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and one other. How much details, how much information? I think we need more details on this, but it's an enormous story. It probably gives a bit of support to the Bush-Cheney crowd about what they were doing at Guantanamo Bay, and I think people will really want the details there rather than, I think Panetta's sort of opened a bit of a window to say maybe, and I think we want to follow that one up pretty closely.
The US is also being very careful not to directly criticise Pakistani officials, specific people in the military and intelligence services, although they've said it's inconceivable that somebody somewhere didn't know. I mean, how delicate is that balance for the US going forward?
Well, enormously delicate. I mean, this is the big issue, really, in my mind, this relationship between the United States and Pakistan. I mean, it's the killing of one person, a very wanted person, bin Laden, but the amount of attention that relationship is now receiving, in some ways, is a great example of how one event can open up, discussion about all sorts of things, and that relationship with Pakistan is complicated, it's fraught with all sorts of dangers. How the Pakistani people respond to this, I think, is interesting. So I think that conversation needed to be had. I mean, it's hard to have it in a mature way. Sometimes on the congressional floor there'll be a lot of claim and counterclaim, but I think it is a conversation that needed to take place, and a fascinating conversation that is occurring at the moment.
Mama, we'll talk to you about it again sometime. Brendon O'Connor, thank you very much.
My pleasure.